Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Cooking with Tovia. Today I'm going to show you guys how to make meatballs and gravy my way. This is a request that I got from a subscriber. All the ingredients will be listed in the video's description field, as well as inside the video in the ticker that will pop up. Don't forget to follow me on social media at Facebook and Instagram. So I have here 2 pounds of lean ground beef, and I'm just doing this in my bowl in my mixer because it's easier. If you don't have a mixer, you can do this by hand. To that, I'm going to add 3 eggs, and my eggs are room temperature. My ground beef is room temperature as well. So I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of garlic powder and 2 teaspoons of onion powder. So I have here 1 large onion, and I have in there 5 cloves of garlic. And I did pull some of the onion out and put it on the side. So I'm just gonna use my little hand chopper to just finely chop this. And I brought this from Tupperware, if you guys are wondering. And I got this from Simply Sarah. She sells Tupperware. I really love this chopper because it just, you can really puree everything. I'm going to dump everything in. Uh, 2 teaspoons of kosher salt. 2 teaspoons of paprika. And I have some creole seasoning here. I'm just going to add a teaspoon creole seasoning. I'm going to add exactly 1.5 teaspoons of liquid smoke. So I'm using a half teaspoon, in case you guys are wondering why I added 3. Okay, so I'm going to just put this onto my machine, my stand mixer with the paddle attachments fitted. So I'm going to go ahead and just mix those ingredients together. I just like to mix it until the meat is really broken apart. So I have some fresh breadcrumbs that I just ran it into my little hand chopper, and this is New York Kaiser rolls that I'm using for my breadcrumbs. So I've just added a cup of breadcrumbs, and I'm gonna add more. So I'm gonna go ahead and add all the breadcrumbs, and I'll let you know how much I added total. So I added a total of 2.5 cups of breadcrumbs. Just enough so when I mix everything, you see that the ground beef was coming from the sides of the bowl. And that's what I'm looking for. Now, if you wanted to add some black pepper to this, you could. I didn't add any black pepper because the Creole seasoning has it. So I'm just going to use a tablespoon. Scoop out some of the meatballs. Roll it together. Make them a little bit smaller. So that's how I'm going to roll each meatball. And see how it's beautifully shaped because we used the mixer. So I'm going to go ahead and line my pan up with some meatballs. I'm not going to cook all this at one time. I will save the rest of tomorrow. But you can use this for your Salisbury steaks and meatloafs as well. So we'll be back once I rolled all that out. So I got all my meatballs rolled. So I'm going to bake some of these in a preheated 475 degree Fahrenheit oven for 18 to 20 minutes. We'll be back. So here's my meatballs. And I did 2 batches in the oven, but I baked them in this pan. Oh, they're still hot. But it's really not much fat in the bottom of my pan here because I used lean beef. But they took a total of 19 minutes for them to bake for me. So in my pan, I began melting down 3.5 tablespoons of unsalted butter, and I melted it down on low heat. I just raised the temperature just to get the oil to a point, the butter to a point that is bubbling, and I'm going to just shake in 3.5 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. So I'm going to turn the pan on high, and I'm just going to begin to brown the flour. Now if you find that your pan gets too dry, the flour is too dry, it's not really moist, just add like a half a teaspoon more butter just to get it to a fluid state. You're going to constantly take your spoon or whisk, just stirring this roux until it gets to a nice dark chestnut brown. It will take about 5 to 6 minutes. So while this is reaching that stage, I'm just going to toss in about a quarter of an onion that I just chopped up. So I like to brown the onion in the roux. I'm going to turn my heat down to medium high. So I'm going to cook this for a few minutes more. So I've been stirring this for about 4 minutes now, and you see it's starting to get pretty dark. And I'm still working on medium high heat. I haven't even left the stove. I just been stirring the entire time. So we're almost at that stage because it's going to happen real quick once it hits that dark stage. So we're going on about 5 minutes and 40 seconds, and you see it's pretty dark. So I'm going to pour in my water. I'm going to start off by adding about 1.5 cups of water. I'm going to whisk. I'm going to turn the heat up on high. I'm just going to constantly whisk. So I'm just checking to make sure everything is thoroughly whisked in. I'm going to allow this to come to a boil. So as this is coming to a boil, I'm going to add some spices. I'm going to allow this to come to a boil, and as this is coming to a boil, I'm going to add some spices. Let's have a teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of garlic powder, 1.5 teaspoons of onion powder. The reason why I'm adding the onion powder, even though I'm using real onions, is because the onion powder has a different flavor. Because the onion powder, when onion powder is created, the onions are dehydrated. So when they're dehydrated, it sweetens the onions. And the dehydrated onions are ground down to powder. So that's why I'm adding the onion powder as well as the real onions. So I get a lot of comments about that in my videos. I'm going to shake in half a teaspoon of black pepper. I'm going to add my meatballs to the gravy. I'm going to reduce the heat from high to about medium high. And then I'm going to cover this and let this go for about 10 minutes. And then usually after about 10 minutes, I give everything a stir, reduce the heat, and let it simmer for about 20 minutes. So cover, reduce to medium, about medium, really a low medium high, and let this go for 10 minutes. So it's been going for about 10 minutes. And so as it's sat and cooked for a while, everything will thicken up even more. So I'm going to reduce the temperature to low, and I'm just going to let this go for about 20 more minutes. I'm going to just keep checking often to make sure these aren't sticking to the bottom of the pan and burning. So here's my meatballs. It looks so good. And I'm going to serve it with egg noodles. I'm just going to spoon some of the gravy over first. So here's the meatballs and gravy. And I just served it with egg noodles. You can serve it with mashed potatoes or have it by itself or with rice. So I'm just cut this in half so you guys can see the inside. Let's see that. It's still nice and moist. You can see all those onions and spices. But just love how you see those little flecks of pepper from the creole seasoning. Just give it a taste. The meatballs are real tender, moist. Taste all the onions and the garlic. Absolutely amazing. The gravy itself is just so full of flavor. I can't even begin to describe how delicious this is. But I just love how this pairs with the egg noodles. Nice and comforting and hearty for the wintertime. Please don't forget to check out my previous videos if you're new to my channel. Also, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Please leave a comment and please hit the thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching and see you next time. So here's my meatballs. And I did 2 batches in the oven, but I baked them in this pan. Oh, they're still hot. But it's really not much fat in the bottom of my pan here because I used lean beef. But they took a total of 19 minutes for them to bake for me.